Welcome to another episode on the Phoenix Rising podcast. I am your host, Lisa Hillier, spiritual mentor and priestess. I have guided hundreds of women into the mysteries within them to rise rooted into their sovereign selves. And today I have Malena Pena on the show with me. Malena is a feminine energy relationship coach. She has been in the field for the past 10 years, and through her successful blog and one-to-one mentorship, she has helped numerous women embrace their goddess within to help create the relationship of their dreams. Malena is based in LA, however, works with women all over the world. And after much inner work, she is now living her happily ever after with the man of her dreams after a failed first marriage, her 2 children, and a boxer puppy. And this conversation is so rich in cultivating the relationship of your dreams with the masculine, with your man. Can't wait to dive in. Welcome, Malena. And to start, we're going to start with the question of what has been the journey that has brought you to the work that you're offering the world today?
Okay, so this journey, really, I've always gravitated towards psychology when I was young. I've always been a very spiritual being since I was young. And this question of relationship, I think I started with my first boyfriend at 15, and I've always just been very relational, in how I approach the world. But I wasn't very good at it. I just never really, I had horrible relationships through my teen years. In my young 20s, I ended up marrying a gentleman, and we were married for 12 years. And it just felt like the relationships were getting worse. My marriage was getting worse. I was just falling apart because of how torturous it was to me to be in a bad relationship. And I divorced in 2012, and I had 2 young children, a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. And I thought that my salvation was going to be in finally meeting the man of my dreams that would then turn my life around and finally sweep me off my feet and make everything better. And I reunited with an old high school flame who was kind of the love of my life. This is after my divorce. And shortly into our new relationship, I noticed everything started to go bad and things started to just deteriorate quickly. And within about 4 months, he basically said, I don't know if we're a good match. I don't know if I can do this with you. And it was heartbreaking because I thought this was what was going to save me. So we broke up, and I entered kind of what I would call my dark night of the soul, where I was newly divorced, single mother with 2 young children. And now the relationship that I've always wanted was not going to happen. And so I had this aha moment where I realized maybe I'm the problem. I'd never looked at myself. I'd never reflected. I'd never even imagined that anything I did was contributing to the, demise of these relationships I've had since I was 15. And then I obviously started picking up, I'd always been spiritual. So I'd always read a lot of spiritual books, but I started kind of diving into like, how do you do relationship, And I kind of discovered all these wonderful coaches and authors and mentors. I fell into the whole feminine energy kind of world. And I've always been an academic at heart. And I just discovered all this information, and all of it led back to what was I doing that was contributing to the downfall. And I started making changes, and I started seeing the changes. Oh, me and my high school sweetheart got back together. We decided to give it another shot.
Mm-hmm.
And I had all these new tools. So I was like, okay, if this doesn't, if it doesn't work with him, fine, because I'll use these tools on somebody else. And it was incredible when I started being different, how he showed up differently and how the relationship started to change. And I was like a kid in the candy store with these new ways of being and these tools. Now, mind you, it was a lot of inner work, a lot of pain, a lot of transformation, a lot of just awakening. But I now realized I had so much power over what I was creating in relationships. And so then I became a relationship coach, because who's better to teach this than somebody who has been through it?
Been through the depths
Sorry,
of
that's
it
a long
themselves.
answer.
No, that's beautiful. And are you still with your high
Yes,
school sweetheart?
yes.
Oh, that's beautiful.
He was the emotionally unavailable, narcissist, non-committed love avoidant, right? All
Yeah.
those popular terms. Shortly after we got back together, maybe a year later, he asked me to marry him, moved in, and is the most loyal man in the whole world. So it's just amazing, you know?
I love that. It's like when we focus on ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
the people in our lives automatically shift
Yes. And I
as
always tell
well.
women, when I coach women, I say, look, it's a win-win for you. Because if you do the inner work, right, and you become the best version of you, what I like to call the goddess, two things are going to happen. Either the man you're with is going to change, because he's going to now respond to a different energy, or he's going to just vibrate out of your experience, and you won't care, because you know something better is waiting for you. So either way, you're going to get the best.
Yeah. So what does that inner work looked like for you? I know that
I know. What is that term? It's such a
it's
popular
vast.
term.
It's vast, the work we do on ourselves, but are there kind of some key
Yeah.
journeys that you've gone through in those inner realms?
I would say the biggest one, because I also was very frustrated with this term self-love. Like, I would get so mad when I would read books or blogs and it would say, you just need to love yourself. You just need, because what does that mean? Since I was a young girl, I've been trying to figure out what that means, and nothing's really shifted for me. So for me, what that really meant was getting in touch with my feelings, but not when I talk to women about getting in touch with feelings, they can express to me um, a feeling like, I feel angry, I feel sad, I feel disappointed. But when I say getting in touch, I mean like somatically getting in touch. What does my feeling, what am I feeling inside my body that I am trying to resist? Which is usually why I have all these behaviors and all these thought processes. It's all a defense against being with some uncomfortable feeling. So a lot of my inner work was, when the uncomfortable feeling starts to rise, stepping out of my mind and stepping into the actual feeling and being with it with all my senses. And so I actually developed this type of work, which I call feeling work, which is where when you get triggered, right? Instead of running away from that feeling and trying to fix the outside world, right? Fix the man, come up with a plan, go inside and be with that feeling. And I have descriptions like, what does it feel like in your chest when you feel sad? Does it feel heavy? Does it feel soft? Does it feel constricted? And I really walk women through being with the feelings that pretty much their whole life they've tried to run from. That's the core of inner work for me, is learning to be with the pain that we've been burying inside ourselves for so long.
Yeah, that's powerful, because in my experience, that pain that I was avoiding for so many years just created all these walls and control
Yes.
mechanisms and repelling mechanisms and just like all this resistance to
Yes.
essentially keep away what I truly desired.
Which then doesn't allow you to be a truly feminine woman, because part
Mm.
of that being a feminine woman is vulnerability and open heart space.
Yeah.
So I always say to women, being a feminine woman is really, it's a journey healing your past, because there's no way around it. You can't become a soft, open, vulnerable feminine woman without going back and clearing all that pain by, how I see it is being with it and letting it actually come up.
Yeah. We'll go deeper into being a feminine woman for sure. But with that openness and vulnerability, definitely. It's like we create walls and then we become very masculine and very hardened and push away the outside world in a sense. So with that openness and vulnerability and receptivity, which is so, so beautiful for you, how do you create that safety so that it feels safe to be all of that in a world where your heart might have gotten broken or shut down or shattered?
So for me, I know this is going to sound funny, but I'm always safe
Mm.
because I'm connected and I'm grounded to something greater. So my home base is kind of my eternal nature, right?
Mm.
That's that's where I'm grounded in, is that part of me that's never been harmed, never been threatened. So pure love, uh, peace, compassion. There's a deep seated connection I have to my internal being.
Mm.
So in that sense, whatever I do in the world may hurt, but I can feel it, right? I know how to be with my hurt. I know how to be with disappointment. I know how to be with grief. And eventually I move through it, because feelings really were meant to be moved through, not to get stuck in. And so if I have that home base of safety within myself, I I never really get worried about too much about being vulnerable, because I don't feel that threatened by anything.
Mm.
It's something I'll move through if it does hurt. You know,
Yeah.
people are not, or they're human, they're going to let us down, they have their own reasons why they do the things they do, and I'll just move through it.
What I received from that was really, you'll be okay on
Yeah.
the other side. It's like we can go through the most painful experiences in life, but we're always okay
Yes. Yeah.
once we've.
I have the tools to also, I have the tools to get myself to a better feeling place. It's a very internal process, but if I am feeling disappointed with something or saddened by something, I allow myself that space to feel it. And I also know how to gently walk myself back to a better feeling place.
Mm.
And
Yeah. And with that spiritual aspect that you were speaking to, would that be like God?
it is. And I think everybody has their own kind of experience. So, and I think all experiences of God are, good for the person, right? So for me, yes, God is an experience, not necessarily something external, some force outside. It is a force outside, but it is also inside of me.
Mm.
So therefore, I just connect to that loving kind of force and experience, and I always have access to it.
Beautiful, beautiful. So with that, who is the feminine? Who is the feminine in her truest like essence?
Oh, I love that question. Oh, she I think she's a lot of what I just described, because she is very powerful. There is all this back and forth about, it being feminine. Does that mean you just do what a man says, and, you're a doormat, and, you're just an agreeable woman. And it's not, because in order to truly be feminine and vulnerable, like we said, you have to be so strong inside, and you have to have such a core and connection to something inside of you. So I think a truly feminine woman is very strong inside, and she's very connected to her feelings, both good and bad. She's a bit of an alchemist in that way, that she can take whatever negative feeling she's having and she can turn it into gold in the relationship and in herself. Um, and she knows she's soft, and she knows how to be supportive and to nurture the world, not just her man, but her children, her friends, her she's very connected to nature. She can feel the same essence she has in nature. She's good at communicating because she lives with an open heart. So her communication isn't full of daggers. It's really aimed at connecting, not conflict. Most of all, love is her kind of goal in all situations, creating more love, receiving love, enjoying love. She's sensual. So she, taste, touch, sight, smell, all of that is just an important part of her day. I don't know.
That was beautiful. I love that, the dagger part. And what that spoke to me about is, strong communication where there's not daggers in it, that passive aggressive underlying jabs that
Right.
I know I have given many times in my life. And it's the shadow aspect of the feminine.
Yes.
And it's essentially, in my experience, was because of fear of intimacy and love. And so that control and resistance could look like daggers into the heart of the man.
Absolutely. And it's funny because like with my husband, although yes, we've created this beautiful relationship that flows. We're human, right? There's moments. And I'll always have this running commentary in my head about what I would say if I wasn't who I was and knew what I knew and practiced what I practiced. And I crack myself up sometimes because I'm like, wow, that would be really mean if you said that. And I won't. But that voice is that kind of urge to fight, right? Is still there.
Yeah, that hardened.
And it doesn't mean I don't speak up. I mean, I always, another thing I tell women is you have veto power. You don't just follow him to the ends of the earth and say nothing.
Yeah.
You let him lead, but you listen to your intuition and you have veto power.
Yeah. So your Instagram is called The Art of Loving a Man, right? Loving Man. Mm-hmm. I love that. And I think it's so beautiful because it's not really something that we're taught we're not taught about relationship.
Right.
In school, in society. Most of our learnings came from our parents. Mm-hmm. And a lot of our, the men in our lives were oftentimes quite absent, just kind of the generations that we've lived through, that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's just not something that's commonly spoken about. So how does a woman love a man?
I think I have also on my website, it says slow, soft, and sweet underneath it. And there were just 3 words that I felt like described the vibe, right? That's what I wanted when I was starting to come into this new idea and become this new person. I thought slow, soft, and sweet. It just felt right. I'll never forget the first moment I practiced one of these kind of new skills with my husband, but he was just my boyfriend at that time. I was mad at him because I was always mad at a man. And he was coming to my house and he had a hard day and he walked in the door and I was going to be cold and a bit passive aggressive because I was mad about, I don't know if he was late or there was something I was upset about. And he sat on the bed and he started to tell me he had a long, hard day. And in that moment, I realized I'm going to be a sanctuary right now. Because really what I was mad about was not that important. It was just another reason to be upset. And so he laid down and I cuddled up next to him and I started to like caress his face. And I was soft and I was sweet. And you just saw him relax. And we were talking and we started laughing about something. And, the night just kind of flowed. And I remember at that moment thinking, we could have had such a different night. I could have just been a little standoffish. I could have made him beg to ask me what was wrong. I could have put up some wall because I wasn't getting something that I thought I wanted, which is funny because often we as women, if we do change how we relate to men, we get what we want tenfold.
Mm.
If you can just be patient enough to let that practice, bear you some fruits. So that night when I saw how different he responded to me, you know what I mean? He, kind of took me in his arms, and it was just a romantic, beautiful night. I realized this is an art. This is an art. How to love a man is an art.
Yeah, that soft, receptive space is what really stood out in that sanctuary,
Yes. And
creating
that
a
doesn't mean
loving.
I'm not feisty. I'm Latin. I can be a feisty woman, and he knows that,
Yeah.
But I'm very respectful, and I'm careful, doesn't mean I don't have opinions, or I don't, you know, what do you call it? Exercise any kind of rights that I feel like there's something I need, or it's just how you do it, which is so important.
Yeah. Could you give us an example, if anything comes to mind, of communicating your desires or your hurt in a way that shuts him down, and
Oh,
then in a way that opens him up?
okay. So one thing I know shuts him down is when he says, "What's wrong?" and I say nothing. Even, like he'll say, "What's wrong?" and I'll say, I don't do this anymore, but in the past, nothing. And he'll go, "What's wrong?" I say nothing. And then he'll do it 3 times. For some reason, he used to say it 3 times. And he said, "What's wrong?" I say nothing. He goes, "All right, I'm not asking anymore." And then I'd be like, "Oh no, darn it." So, okay. So that shuts him down, the nothing. Like, once I read a long time ago, and it's so true, is that men really want you to tell them what's on your mind the moment it's on your mind, except when he's at work.
Mm.
But if you start to feel something, then he wants to be able to always take your temperature and not feel like, oh no, because most men feel like women are just holding things in and holding things in and holding things in. And then it all comes out at us, during some other fight. And they think, why couldn't you have just talked to me about all of this when it first started? So one of the things that shuts him down is if I say nothing, and hold it all in, because he knows it's not true. Another thing that shuts him down, and this is a big, in my work, one of the things I coach women to do is to communicate without blame, criticism, or attack. That's the first, what do you call it, job I give to them. And most women say, "I can't even speak then." Right? If you are interacting with your man and there's a problem and you do no blame, criticism, or attack, most women find they can't talk.
Yeah, because I guess the normal, quote unquote, normal way to say something is like, you did this.
Mm-hmm. Or you
That's
always do this,
blame.
or why, how could you, criticism,
Yeah.
what's wrong with you, and that kind of stuff. So another way that always shuts them down is blame, criticism, and attack. So the kind of shutting yourself down, or the blame, criticism, attack. So what actually gets him to respond to me is when I say what I'm feeling, but I express it as a statement of my internal experience. So I can say, I just felt really sad because I wanted to spend the weekend doing something together. So that's a live example, because he owns his own business. He's always working. On the weekends, he's, still working.
Yeah.
And as a woman, I want attention. But, it's how I asked for it that really, and he says, "I'm so sorry. I just have this new thing going on and it's taking up my weekend time." And that day that I actually said that, he had worked all day, like 6 a.m. on that Saturday till like 8 p.m. And when he got home, he said, "Are we still going out to dinner?" And I thought, you still want to go to dinner? You've worked like, 80 hours this week and you worked on Saturday. And he goes, "I'm still taking you out to dinner." And as a feminine woman, I know how to receive. So as much as I wanted to be like, "You don't have to, it's okay, you don't have to," you've worked hard enough. I said, all right. And I went and put on my heels and
Come in.
let him take me to dinner. But I think a key there too is that I was okay if he didn't, because I had expressed how, what was going on with me. So there was, we connected on it. And I just trusted that he would take that hurt feeling and he would do something with it. And it didn't have to be that minute.
Yeah. What that felt like, as opposed to projecting onto him what is wrong with him, it felt like owning your feelings and how it
like there was
affected you in a sense, I think.
And really letting go of that outcome, because a lot of women will use these I feel statements, but they're very, very adamant about what that outcome should be after they make their I feel statement.
Yeah,
and it doesn't work that way. And they can feel that. Men can feel it.
Was it that manipulation piece?
Kind of, yeah. Like, I feel sad because you're not spending the weekend with me. And if their men don't do anything to fix that, then they go into the blame, attack, and criticism because they didn't get what they want.
Does that feel like transactional? Almost like I'm
Yes.
sharing this with you to get something out of you.
And it doesn't work that way. It just, the nature of it has to be kind of very letting a man step into his power and fix your feelings as he sees fit.
Yeah. So
and
transactional.
I mean, you really, because at the end of the day, a masculine man and a feminine woman, the dance is he's cherishing my feelings. I'm respecting his thoughts, his ideas, his way of being in the world. As long as this is a man that truly loves me, I should be able to express how I'm feeling and know he'll remedy it in the way that he sees fit. It may not be how I see, but he loves me. Of course, he's going to do something to fix it.
Yeah. I think that transactional love and unconditional love is really important. That's something that I'm looking at within myself when I say something to a man. Is it to get something back, or is it just because I want to express how I'm feeling from a very loving place, a very intimate place, as opposed to...
It all kind of goes back to that original point I made earlier about I can walk myself back into a better feeling place without anything externally. So there's my power, is I feel sad that we didn't get to hang out this weekend. But at the deepest level, I don't need anything from you because I can walk myself back to a better feeling place, which makes a man jump through hoops to actually do it for you, which is so funny. Right? That's all they want. They want to be off the hook. They just don't want to feel that pressure of control, that, that transactional, like, oh no, she's telling me she's sad. I better do exactly what she wants. I have to do what she wants. Men are rebellious by nature to a controlling woman. So women control, they don't even realize they're controlling, or they're trying to cover it up with sweetness. They're still going to get the same rebellion from the man.
Something that's been showing up a lot on my Insta feed around men is what they truly desire is around acknowledgement. They want to be acknowledged and seen. Does anything come up for you around that, about what a man truly desires and how a woman can give that to him?
When you say acknowledged and seen, I feel like the word respected fits a little bit more how I understand it. So he wants to be acknowledged and seen. He wants to be respected. So he wants you to know that as a man, the biggest gift you can give him is not trying to control him, not trying to make him do it your way, not trying to relate to him as a woman, like he's a woman, expecting him to relate to you. You know what I mean? Like, he is not a woman, therefore he's not going to do things that you feel like he should do sometimes. And to respect that the masculine, it's a very different energy. It's a very different approach to life. It's a different feeling. way of being in the world, and maybe acknowledging that. A
Yeah.
lot of my growth came from understanding men, you know? And I remember with my husband, when we were dating, I would always want him to talk about his feelings, but like a lot for a long time. And he would try, right? Because he wants to make me happy, but you could see it was painful. And then when I started to realize that, you know, he to do that in smaller little moments was more natural to him. I got a different response in those smaller bursts and moments. He would express so much more than when I would drag these long conversations or always be like, well, how are you feeling? And what are you feeling? And like he even told me once, he's like, when you say, how are you feeling? I feel like you're speaking another language. Like I have to like stop what I'm doing and like try to get in touch with this part of me that I'm not familiar with. So forgive me if I don't respond to you right away. He's like, I'm not like you. When I say, how are you feeling? You can rattle off for 30 minutes, everything.
Yeah. Yeah. When you were speaking earlier to that, like respect, it felt like when we respect the masculine, it's like we're saying we're trusting their lead.
Yes.
And
Yes.
for them to show up in
Yes.
that way, and they're responding to our energy and our tone, but they're leading
Yes.
in the scene. Does anything come to mind for you of what the core differences are between the masculine and the feminine?
So many. Yes. I feel like when we're upset, and this is pretty kind of like, this is one I think a lot of people know, women like to talk about it and right away and start to work through it and connect and talk and kind of hash it out. And sometimes just the talking about it makes us feel better, where men are more solution oriented, but their process is more internal. So they like to be with themselves and take a moment to reflect and take a moment to gather themselves, maybe. And then they have to, it's not as easy for them to switch back and forth from their logical brain to their emotional brain. So they have to figure out which one they need to be in, how to merge them, depending on the situation. So I think that probably when you're communicating or relating to a man, to understand that sometimes when he gets quiet, it's not that he's ignoring you, or it's not that he doesn't want to fix things, but he's trying to most of the time they're just figuring out, how do I make everything okay again? How do I make this stop? How do I make the conflict stop? But to know that just because they're not like pouring into the conversation with all these feeling kind of tones, that doesn't mean they're not committed to making things better.
Yeah. Women, well, I know for sure, even when I tell a story, and when a man tells me a story, it's completely different. Like I have to unpack every single
All the
detail.
details. Yes. Yes.
And I think that just speaks to so much, where it's like they don't have to unpack every single emotion.
Yes.
Which a woman, we do. And it's beautiful, but
It
they're
is.
different.
They're different. Another really important one is they speak to fix it, and we speak to be heard and validated. So that alone, I mean, is such a problem for us, because we're completely moving in two different directions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as women, we don't always make sense, right? I mean, I'm feeling this right now. I don't care what I felt yesterday. This is what I'm feeling right now. This is, and I just want to be validated and seen and heard in this moment. And for them, they're just like, I thought we talked about this already and came up with the solution. Why are you bringing it up again? Because in this moment, I feel it again. It's like another wave is washing over me and I feel it. Where they're very much like, okay, so what can we do to fix this and make this not come up anymore?
Yeah.
Which doesn't feel validating, right? Because it feels very too logical.
It's like that chaos, the chaos of the feminine, that like sort of truth with the masculine, where he just pierces through it and is kind of like, I'm not taking, I'm not kind of like I'm piercing through it to just pierce through the bullshit in a sense.
Exactly. So in
Yeah.
that way, really, as one of my tools that I use that always works so well is I can say to him, I know I may not be making sense to you right now, or I know this, I tell him I'm in my girl brain.
Mm.
That's our kind of code for like, it's gonna be fuzzy and it's not gonna make a lot of sense. And you're gonna get really frustrated with me. But I just need to be in my girl brain right now.
I love that. The girl brain, or the feminine brain that just bounces all over the place and is here and then there. I often like listen to myself sometimes telling stories or having discussions, and I will go from one place to another place and back to that other place. It's just all over the map in a really beautiful way. But
Yeah,
that's where that like masculine truth can just pierce through all
absolutely.
of it. With receptivity, I think receptivity is one. I mean, I'll just speak for myself, but that's definitely been something I've struggled with on my path to fully receive the
Mm.
masculine, um, because of so many different scenarios that have created that resistance to it. So, how does a woman start to open herself to fully receive the masculine?
Let's see. Well, I know for me, when I did start to receive, when things did start to flow and this really started to work for me, I remember one moment, it was really painful. I know that sounds really weird, but I literally, it felt painful. Like, I think he was like, I don't remember what exactly he was, buying me something or going to take me somewhere and showering me with all this goodness. He was saying beautiful things to me. Basically, he was giving me everything that I wanted
Mm.
in terms of commitment and adoration and whatever it was. And I remember instead of feeling joy, I felt pain. I thought, why would this be painful? And I really think that because we do have these walls, right? Because, perhaps we were let down or hurt in the past, by the masculine, whatever way, however far back that went for us, that when we do open ourselves back up to receive, the first feeling may be pain, and to be prepared for that. But if you can sit with that pain long enough, it'll pierce through that pain, and then it'll hit a place in you that feels natural, like, this is what it feels like. This is natural. This is how I'm supposed to feel, like that goddess I talk about all the time. Like, there will be if you can hold yourself through that tension
Mm.
of discomfort and pain, then eventually you'll come home to this feeling that feels very natural.
Yeah. The discomfort. I love that. It's like sitting in the discomfort
It
because,
is.
my natural response when, say, a compliment or something really beautiful was given to me by a man, I would essentially throw it back at him. And he would kind of be like, "What?" I wouldn't really throw it back to him, but, say he said something really beautiful, I would mold it in a way like sarcasm or something
Oh,
like
I just
that.
had a client tell me about that. Yeah.
And he'd be like, "Why did you just do that? Like, what, you didn't receive what I just gave you." Um, and so to start to break down that was to not throw it back at him, and not in a literal sense, but to sit in that discomfort of like, I'm actually going to receive
Yeah.
what he just said.
I mean, it can feel like a strong wind just passing through you almost, like, like so strong that it feels like it's going to sweep you away. But then you
Mm,
realize you're still standing. And
yeah.
I know this sounds so silly because people, what do you mean? You're receiving kind words, you're receiving commitment, you're receiving gifts, whatever it is you're receiving. But again, most of us women have built so many walls, that that's why this is true. This
Mm,
experience is true for us.
yeah.
And now I'm really good at it. Now, before, also, one of the things I used to do is when you'd say, "You're so beautiful" or something, I would say, "Well, you're pretty handsome too." Always you too. Like, you give it to me, I give it to you. Now I say thank you, and it, and then I still get a little twinge, like a little discomfort, but it rests more deeply now with me.
Yeah. We don't have to give it back. We can just simply
Like receive
receive it.
and thank you. So a nice practice is just a really, even if it's an internal, like you say thank you, to him, but then inside, another soft thank you, like almost like you're saying thank you to the universe, like thank you, like I see what's happening. I'm becoming a softer woman. I'm becoming a more vulnerable woman. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to practice this.
Yeah. What that felt like as well is there's a lot of dialogue out there. I hear it. I've definitely said it myself, like, where are all the good men, And so when those beautiful experiences happen with a man, I thank God for that, because it's like, thank you for this experience with, whoever,
Yeah.
because that's acknowledging what's always been there instead of seeing what's always not been there.
Yeah.
And it also is that appreciation where it's like, I really enjoyed that time with this man. More of
And
that, please, kind of
yes.
thing.
And men really do want to please women. They want, I think
Mm.
on my Instagram today, my quote is men want to love women well, or something like that. At their core, they want a woman they can give to,
Mm.
because that gives them that natural sense of kind of a hero. I'm a hero. I am doing my job of making a woman happy and pleasing her and making her feel good. I think all men have that need buried inside them. It's just what woman is going to kind of do the dance with them to get that out.
Mm. Beautiful. Earlier on in the conversation, or I think it was when you were speaking to you and your beloved and the tools that you use to have this beautiful dance or union, are there tools that you can kind of bring into the conversation or speak about that are really powerful in relationship?
Okay, so appreciation.
Mm.
It sounds really simple and basic, but it's a powerhouse tool. Just overdo it. Just men cannot get enough appreciation. And again, this isn't a manipulative tool. It won't work if you're kind of, I just want him to do what I want him to do, so I'm going to just give him a bunch of appreciation. No, it has to be authentic. But really just like anything and everything, even repeating yourself. I know a practice I used to do at night was I would give him appreciation kisses. So he would lay in bed and then I would snuggle up next to him and then I'd start kissing his cheek and I would say, thank you for ordering food today. Thank you for fixing my bathroom shelf. Thank you for being a good stepdad. Thank you for working so hard. Thank you for, putting gas in my car. And he would just sit there and he would take the kisses like so proud. And then I would stop and he would be like, more. And I would say, that's it for tonight. But tomorrow you can get some more.
Mm.
So, appreciation just, and someone will say, well, he hasn't done anything I can feel like I can appreciate him for. Well, then you just got to find one thing and start with that. And it'll grow exponentially, like one thing you find today. It could be something as simple for thank you for putting the toilet seat down. And tomorrow you can find something else. And just being humble. I don't know. I feel like women have lost that. Being humble, like when you can be humble and not be a doormat.
Mm. Yeah. What does that look like, being humble but not a doormat?
It looks like appreciation, right?
Mm.
It looks like respect,
Mm.
but it also looks like this man is treating you very well. So there's this mutual giving going on, and that's why you're not a doormat. So if this person is not showing up for you in major ways, or I would, every relationship is going to be a little different. Every time I get on a call with a new client, I really figure out, where are they in this relationship? Is it a real relationship? or is it a situationship, right? Because if it's a situationship, I'm going to guide you a little differently. I may not have you doing some of these steps so much because it kind of calls for a few other things. So first you have to figure out what the situation is, and then you kind of apply the tools to it.
Mm-hmm.
But
What's
let me go ahead. Oh, sorry. A situationship. Oh, that's
never heard that.
Oh, that's when you're dating, but you guys are not committed. So there's no real label for the relationship. It's like usually there's intimacy already involved, but you're not in a monogamous, like long-term committed relationship. Okay. So it's like we're in a situation where it could go this way, it could go that way, but nobody's talking about it.
Okay, that makes sense. The earlier stages of a relationship.
Yeah. Maybe. Oh, but situationships tend to go on for a while.
Oh, okay.
So you could be in a situationship for 5-6 months.
Okay, but you probably want to get out of the situationship, right?
Exactly.
And get into the relationship.
Exactly.
Okay, I love that.
So you did ask about, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, the tools, and I said appreciation is a major one. The other one I didn't want to not say is playfulness. I think that is such a big part of the feminine goddess path is playfulness. Because I think when you are not so dependent on the outcome, right? It frees you up. You have a freer spirit. Yeah. When you know you'll be okay, when you are creating your own love inside and just sharing it with the man versus I'm empty and I need to get it from you to fill me. So when you create your own love inside and you're sharing it, you have a lot of room for free spirit and playfulness, and men love playfulness.
Yeah. It feels like, I don't know where I read it, but somewhere where it was like men just like look at the radiance of a woman and is like, she's just so in her bliss. Yeah. She's so in her bliss. And it fills them up. Yes. How a woman can just be in her bliss. And
you're like dancing light. Yeah. And I know most women will say, I'm tired, I just worked all day and I come home and have to do house chores, and if they have children, there's children, and I understand. So I'm not saying you're not always in a nightie with makeup floating around the house dancing. But when you can, when you do feel relaxed enough to be playful, or there are these little moments.
Beautiful. Are there any other tools that come to mind?
So appreciation, playfulness, I would say respect. Definitely respecting his thinking, not trying to be his manager or his therapist. That's another big, that brings out the best in a man when you are not constantly telling him how he can do something better. And that's another, in my mind, I'm always stopping myself from telling him how to do it. Like my husband has this thing that drives me crazy where he doesn't like to plan. I hope he won't be listening to this. He doesn't like to plan vacations in advance. And he'll just last minute, like a month before, be like, we should rent a cabin in Big Bear for New Year's. And I'm like, oh my God, most cabins are taken. It's a lot difficult to do something in 1 month. But I don't comment on that, even though it drives me crazy. I respect that that's how he does it. Do we end up having vacations? Yes. Is it annoying? Yes. Do I respect the way he does it? Totally. It's just
that, like, trusting his lead.
Yeah, that's fine. That's not when I'm not going to use my veto power on that. I'm going to save my veto power for something important.
Yeah.
That really, I feel very strongly about.
That feels like almost like the opposite of what you spoke to would be like mothering him or chopping his balls off and belittling him.
Yeah, you always wait till the last. So what I could have said to him was, you always wait till the last minute. It makes it so hard on us because now we don't get any good cabins. Now we have to scramble. Now we have, I have to make plans for the dog sitter and everything's taken and it just feels chaotic. And can we do this earlier?
Mm-hmm.
That would be the blame, the criticism. That would be the kind of mothering. Why don't you do it better? Why don't you do it the way I see it should be done?
Yeah.
Do it my way. I'm the leader. I think we should do this 6 months in advance. In fact, this is what most women will do. You know what? I'm going to take charge of our vacations now.
Mm-hmm.
And then they end up, but that one thing, if you start to do that, not only will you now be in charge of vacations, but you will start to slowly over years be in charge of everything. And then be upset because now he's not leading. Now everything's on you. He has no opinion. He takes no initiative. He doesn't feel like a man who's taking the reins and doing things. But you didn't want to do it his way to begin with.
Yeah. I think you answered my question, but what was coming up was, what does that subconsciously say to a man when it's like, you know what, I'm just going to do it? Does that say like, I don't trust you?
I'm a better man than you. Meaning I can lead this better. I can control this better. I can manage this better. I'm a better man than you. And most men won't fight that long for that position because they naturally don't like the conflict with the feminine. So they'll just hand over the reins and just quietly acquiesce to you, let themselves be emasculated, and then the roles reverse and you become masculine and they become feminine.
And then the polarity's kind of gone, and then
sex goes and then nobody's happy.
Yeah. So for somebody in a relationship where they feel like it's the polarity's gone, the intimacy isn't there, the spark's gone, she maybe doesn't feel like her man's doing the work. She's moved into that like hardened woman where she's doing it all. She's juggling all the balls. She's planning all the dates. She's the man, essentially. Yeah. Is there something that you would recommend to start to initiate the polarity to start to come back, and the roles, the feminine woman and the masculine man to start to come back into play?
The first thing I would say to her is be patient. This is going to take a little bit of time because I have a lot of clients that practice for a week and then get mad because nothing's changed. The polarity has not reversed. So I would definitely give it months. I would even say a full year for some major, major results. But the first thing I would do is to stop advising him on everything, which is going to be really difficult because if it's a strong reversal, he's going to literally not be able to do anything without you. He's like a child who can't make any decisions or moves without consulting with you. So if you slowly stop advising him and kind of just gently pushing it back into his corner, I don't know, what do you think? I don't know. And there's a skill where I say, just remind them of times that they've made decisions in the past. I don't know, last time you made that decision about work, it turned out so well. So kind of, reminding them, a man, that he does make good decisions, because he basically has to have faith back in himself that he's a man. That's for a very strong role reversal situation. So stop advising him, which is also the same as stop managing him. So, but I'm very, he has a daughter, teenage daughter, and, he has issues with the ex-wife, and, I'm always I don't try to, I give him advice if he asks, so what do you think I should do? Then I'll just, mention a few things maybe that I see, but other than that, I stay very much out of. He has his own business, and although I have a million opinions about how he runs the business and financial decisions, as long as, we're safe. He's not making anything, he's not harming us. I
Mm.
don't give him advice on how to run his business.
Are there any key things that help? Because it sounds like there's a blended family, we'll call it, right? Like you have
Yes,
your own kids and then he has his own kids.
yes.
Any key things that allow it to run smoothly?
I let him have a voice in how things are dealt with the kids.
Mm.
So, but there are my veto powers, right? Because they are my kids and we can become kind of mother bears.
Mm.
So, but I make sure that he doesn't feel like he's works for the house, supports the house, but has no opinion. So I'm
Mm.
very, very sure to make him feel like I listen to his advice. I consider his advice. His advice is put into action. But sometimes, I will say, that feels a little harsh.
Mm.
Um, and because he knows me, he'll try to kind of maybe revise what his original idea was to take into consideration like my feelings.
Mm. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Any other key ones in dealing with exes and step
Um,
parents and all that kind of stuff?
so with my ex-husband, I can get really worked up about things. It's just the nature of, having an ex-husband, right? Um, I go to him and get his opinion. And
Mm.
again, sometimes that doesn't, his advice I know isn't going to fly. Like it's not going to work. But I make sure that I go to him and I get his opinion and I try to incorporate it to the best of my ability.
Mm. Feels like that respect piece.
It is the respect. Like I just don't do whatever I want to do. I grew up with a single mother that ran the house. She did end up remarrying, but my stepdad was just on the side. He didn't have a say about anything. He didn't,
Mm.
um, and so I make sure that I give him a say. I respect his opinions and ideas, and most of the time, it's something good for me in the family.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Does anything come to mind for you on women and the masculine wound, the wounds that we hold around the masculine, and how you start to heal the wounds with the masculine specifically? Does anything come around up for you around that?
Let's see. So I feel like the masculine wound, I feel like that's really centered around this idea of trust, right? Can
Mm.
I trust a man is going to love me and not hurt me, right? Is that
Yeah.
is that would you say that's the kind of summary core of the masculine wound?
Yeah, like that you're not going to leave.
You're not going
I
to
can
hurt
trust
me,
you.
leave me. I trust you to take care
Mhm.
of me. Just be, be a man for me and protect me. So again, it just keeps coming back to me about this idea that you really have to trust yourself first. You have to
Mm.
trust, not that you can take care of yourself financially, or physically, um, but I really feel like you need to be able to trust that one, you can walk away from a bad situation.
Mm.
Uh, Two, you can trust that you deserve a good man and can receive it.
Mm.
So I feel like when you trust those two important pieces, that I deserve a good man and I can receive it, and I know when to walk away from a situation that's not good for me, then I feel like everything kind of can be healed with those two things. Not everything, but I mean, you can move forward.
Mm. Yeah.
And maybe
Yeah.
the third part, I trust that I can be okay no matter what happens. I can walk myself back to a good place, loving, calm, peaceful place inside myself.
Yeah. It feels like that. Like we spoke about it earlier on in the conversation about that safety.
Yeah.
peace. And it's like when you feel safe in your own body, in your own company, that you can hold that space for yourself. Like you can be that container is the word that's coming to mind, where it's like,
Yeah.
I can feel the emotions. I can feel the pain. I won't leave myself. I won't abandon myself. I can trust myself.
Therefore,
Then
I
we
can
know.
trust the world. I can trust
Yeah.
the man because one, I'll walk away if it doesn't feel good. that's,
Yeah.
that's easy. That one alone is so powerful for a woman, and a
Yeah.
lot of my coaching is just building women up to that point where they realize I can walk away if this doesn't feel good
Yeah. And know that you'll be okay.
and I'll be okay. But again, it always leads back to this moment with yourself. I'll be okay. I know how to feel the bad and get myself back to the good without
Mm.
anybody, without a man, without anybody, without your parents doing what they need to do, without your friends doing what they need to do, without it. It's always going to be just me. Am I a sovereign being that knows how to get back to the place of love?
Mm. Beautiful. Beautiful. What has been your biggest lesson along the way?
I would say learning to feel my feelings, like really feel them. Like even today before the podcast, I sitting at the bar reviewing the questions, and all of a sudden I got this like anxiety. And I was like, but I usually am pretty even in how I feel inside. Like I always say, like my insides feel like a still pond.
Mm.
So I'm very in tune with myself. So all of a sudden it felt like I had about 100 butterflies fluttering in my chest. And I thought, what is this? This is so strange. And I said, oh, you're probably nervous about the podcast. Am I going to say the right thing? Am I going to, sound informed? Are they going to like me?
Mm.
And I just sat with, I was just curious about it. I said, oh, that's so strange. But I just let myself be, and I felt the feeling. So it's such a powerful practice, and it's core to all of this work. So feeling your feelings and knowing that you, in the end of the day, can get yourself back to feeling love regardless of what anybody's doing.
Yeah, that's a powerful one, that feeling the feelings, because we've been, in my experience, so conditioned for the opposite, like kind of just repress it, shut it down, stop crying, whatever
Right.
narrative was fed to each and every one of us growing up. But that like going into the feelings and feeling it is
It's
literally like where the liberation is.
absolutely. And I read somewhere, which this felt so true to me. It said, all that chatter going on in your mind is all a defense against feeling. It's where you
Mm.
go to distract yourself, to get away from what the real work is, which is going inside and feeling. So when my mind is very active and the voice in my head is just frantic, I usually know that's a cue for me to go in and start to feel.
Yeah. Yeah. That's powerful, because it's like that chatter is usually a way, just like you said, to avoid feeling what is actually going on, what fear is actually going on, or what you're running away from.
And that's
Yeah.
powerful in a relationship, because if you stay in your mind, you're going to get lost in this kind of narrative and this analyzing and this kind of it's there's no vulnerability, because your vulnerability is in your body and your feelings.
Mm. Yeah.
Whereas if you stay in your mind and you're relating to a man, he's not going to be able to connect with you as well as if you go into your body, feel what you're feeling, and then try to express that state without blame. Right? It's not on him and ultimately his responsibility. If you're feeling this is just what you're feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. This was just a really powerful aha moment for me, because I get in my head and I analyze, and especially in relationship with men, but what my mentor was like, men can't multitask like a woman, like they just can't. So, that just speaking to that, getting in the head, because it's like one little thing can happen and then I get in my head about it, create all these stories around it. And at the end of the day, he just can't multitask. like I can multitask. So he was, but if you stay in your body, you don't create all these stories and you don't go down the rabbit hole
Yeah.
of creating a scenario that does not exist. You can save yourself a whole lot of worrying and stress and anxiety around something that's
Two
just
more
not
really
true.
important tools that I've used is the present moment, which I know is very popular. I mean, everybody knows it, but it is work. That is some practice to be in the present moment is very, it's a powerful practice, but it's an important practice. And to become more of a witness to your thought processes than an active participant in them. So I've for many years, I've practiced really disengaging from some of my thought processes to the point where now, like when I hear my mind moving, I mean, it's just silly sometimes. I mean, what it comes up with and the things, I mean, and how it'll take one little piece of information and just jump into a whole story and narration of something. But so again, the witness and the present moment are really important tools too.
Yeah. It is crazy what our mind will come up with to keep us separate from what we truly want, like self-sabotaging mechanisms. Like it's wild what it will tell us. So that's really important. And I just want to acknowledge that being in the present moment, because it just gets tossed around like, well, just be in the present moment, just be in the now. And it's like,
what does that mean?
It is so hard
so
to
hard.
do that, especially with all the distractions we have right now.
Absolutely.
So just acknowledging if somebody listening is like, I'm trying to be in the present moment. You're not alone.
Right.
It's an every moment practice.
It really is.
For sure. Yeah. How do you experience the mysteries?
The mysteries. I would say, again, I hate to be so repetitive, but it's the present moment, right? So for me, when I step outside and like, I know this sounds really funny, but I can feel nature. Like I can literally feel it vibrating. And for me, that is experiencing God, right? I'm experiencing the life force, the love that is kind of vibrating through the entire world. So for me, present moment. And I feel like in my mind, there's this negative voice that won't ever shut up, right? It's the critic, I don't know, it's just the ego, whatever you want to call it. But I also feel like there's a part of my mind that is very calm and loving. I don't hear it very often because the other voice is very loud. But it's very calm, loving, wise, and soothing. And to me, that is experiencing the mystery because I feel like I'm tapping into something else that's deeper than me. Yeah. And I often, do you know, oh, this is interesting. My website or my whole program, The Art of Loving a Man, that came to me through that quietness. One day I was just really quiet and practicing the moment. And I could feel this feeling, and I heard The Art of Loving a Man. I was like, what's that? And all day long, it was like, I could hear The Art of Loving a Man. I was like, what is this? And I was like, that's what I'm going to name my website. And it all like came together.
Yeah. Those little nudges, those soft, subtle whispers.
Yes. So that's how I experience it. But you have to be calm enough, which means you calm your inner state. You have to be aware enough to let the critic not engage the negative inner voice. And then what you're left with is the mysteries.
Yeah. It's like the voice of God.
Right?
Yeah. Beautiful.
I've got to a place in my life now where I'm so bored by everything else. I'm like, everything else bores me. I'm like, I only am like interested in the kind of the spiritual, the sacred, the mysteries.
Yeah. That sounds magical, like the sacred and magic in every single moment when you can see it. How do you root into the self?
I would again say the feeling work. The feeling work. Just going in my body and like, what am I feeling right now? Like right now, like if I were to just like really tap in, like I feel like my chest is a little heavy, like, but I have some other things going on, in my life right now that would make that kind of be. So I feel, I feel like it's a little bit, I still have a few of those butterflies. I would say maybe like a baby elephant sitting on my chest, and I have a bunch of butterflies. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just, and regardless of why I feel that way, my power is in just being in there with it. And whatever actions I need to take, I will now do them. I will take better action because now I'm a little more grounded.
I love that, regardless of why I'm feeling it. I think that piece is so important because oftentimes in my experience, we'll feel something and then it's like, well, I shouldn't feel that. So we try to talk ourselves out of it. And the reality is, well, I'm feeling it. So why not just feel it? It doesn't matter why I'm feeling it.
And I've learned that it's all mixed. It's stuff from when I was 2 years old to when I was 7 years old to when I was 15 to right now in my current situation. Like it is so blended with so much stuff that it's not worth me trying to figure out.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go straight in, be with it, whatever it needs to be, and let myself move from there.
Yeah. That's powerful because the feminine, in her core and her essence is feeling. But as soon as we start to analyze our feelings, we're in our head. And so we've gone out of our core essence.
And it's beautiful to live as a feminine woman, but it can hurt sometimes. I mean, I've had the experience of walking outside and looking at a rose and crying. Because it just felt so beautiful. And I live with such an open heart that everything touches me. But at the same time, if my husband doesn't walk in the door and acknowledge me, that feels like I can collapse from it too. So as a feminine woman, you get the beautiful rose, but you get the collapse when you don't get a certain look. But that's the nature of being vulnerable and living open.
Yeah, it's beautiful, potent, and can be painful all at the same time. Yeah.
But yeah, just learning to live with both sides.
Yeah, the rose and the thorn.
Yeah, there you go.
It's all of it. Is there anything that you want to add to this beautiful conversation, love, before we close?
Oh gosh. One thing it's very important I tell women is that when you first start a new relationship, you both are going to go through a detox. So you both are experiencing love, right? You're falling in love. Everything feels wonderful. But now everything that is not love is going to come up and out. And if you can know that in advance and be prepared for it and allow it to come up and release in a way that's not damaging to the relationship or the person, you can really heal. You know what I mean? Like a lot of women want to say, I'm just going to take some years off and not date so I can heal. I think there is a lot of healing in that. But if you want to get right to the root and the source and do it quickly, get into a relationship.
Yeah.
And
that's so true.
Everything will come up that you need to see and heal. Yeah. It's just the question, are you going to let it come up? And are you going to feel it and let it go and not let it hurt the relationship?
Yeah, that's a powerful one. This just came up for me because it's come up for me recently where I was like, if he doesn't do this by this such and such time, I'm out.
Right.
And then my mentor was like, what are you actually desiring? Right. And I was like, connection. And she's like, so then why would you leave? But it's a defense mechanism, a way to kind of abandon
Yeah.
so that he can't abandon me,
Right.
essentially, so it's so interesting how this stuff comes up. But if you can look at it just like you spoke to and alchemize it into something like, actually what I desire is connection and deeper intimacy, how can I express that, as opposed to run the other way?
Yes.
You meet those layers within yourself.
Yes. And even get to a point where you say, I don't know what the outcome is going to be. I don't know if he will end up doing this or that. All I know is I'm going to do my work. So I get to such an accepted place and so in touch with what I desire, that I would be willing to let him go if he didn't do it.
Yeah.
Or he's going to feel that kind of change in your energy, that it's not being demanded of him, that it's not, there's a different vibe, and he's going to give it to you.
Yeah.
So again, back to that, he's going to give it to you, or you're going to feel so empowered that you're going to feel okay walking away. Yeah. In a loving way, not in a bratty F you, I'm out.
Yes. Do you have any offerings that you want to share that are coming up or anything like that?
I would say one big one, because I have a lot of clients that are dating the emotionally unavailable, non-committed man, just because I have personal experience with that. The first thing I would start to reflect on is, are you emotionally available? Because it's usually the love addict and love avoidant that find each other, right? The women are usually the love addict, the need, I need, please, give me. But underneath that is really a hurt woman that is so desperate to get her needs met that she's really not emotionally available for a real intimate relationship. She just really needs somebody to make her feel better. So if that is you, for the audience, start to take your energy off getting this man to commit and putting it into you to figure out, start to learn about yourself and feel some of that emptiness, really like sit in with your emptiness and learn to create your own love, because then you will be available for a real intimate relationship.
Beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for this beautiful conversation. It'll be in the show notes.
Thank you for having me. It was lovely.
Yeah. Where everybody can reach out to you and experience your magic.
Yes. And I have a website. So when I started some of all these changes, I started blogging about it in 2015. It was like I think my first blog is really short. It's only like maybe 10 sentences. And I think it is called Be His Soft, Sweet Space or something. It's really funny. And I've been blogging for 7 years about my journey. So all the mentors I've had, all the coaches that, helped me change and move through my process, I put a lot of their work up on my blog. I talk about all the changes I've gone through, which is, I need to go back and read some of my blogs from a long time ago, because I probably think they're really funny. But yeah, so I do have a blog. It's Art of Loving a Man. Okay. And it's just, a lot of women tell me that they have literally just started with 2015. I think it's over 200 blogs, and they have read through everything, study and practice. And that's how they've made a lot of their changes. Because some people don't want coaching. They don't, they don't have the time or the resources for it. So that's up there.
Oh, beautiful. That's really beautiful for you to reflect on too, kind of like a diary of your own journey. It is a
diary, yes. And I'm pretty open. I call my husband in it. Well, when I wrote, he wasn't my husband, but I gave him a nickname, El Guapo. So that's kind of funny, because I'll get clients later and they'll be like, well, El Guapo. And then I know they read my blog.
Beautiful. Well, a link will be in the show notes for everybody to check that out for sure. So thank you so much, love.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. I hope we speak again.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining me for an episode of the Phoenix Rising podcast. Please like, share, download, subscribe if you enjoyed this episode, and I will see you next week for another episode on the Phoenix Rising podcast. Sending so much love.